What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Apartment 113 podcast, where we talk with cool folks in the cannabis and psychedelics industry to learn about their projects and celebrate their successes. My name is Rob Sanchez, and this is episode 66. We're joined today by Shayda Torabi, the founder and CEO of Restart, a Texas-based hemp CBD and THC company. Restart is family-owned and operated by Shayda and her two sisters. Their mission is to educate and empower consumers one person, conversation, and cannabinoid at a time. All three sisters have seen the positive aspects of CBD, THC, and other hemp-derived cannabinoids and products they provide. Recognizing the body's natural ability to heal and the need for balance and optimal health, they've created a line of products from vapes, flowers, and edibles to capsules, topicals, and pet supplements, providing THCA D8, D9, CBD, CBG, and CBN at their Texas location in Austin and online. Shayda was also the host of the excellent cannabis industry podcast, To Be Blunt. Check out all 167 episodes on iTunes or Spotify after this. Since then, she's pivoted to focus on her brand and writing while continuing to educate and advocate for cannabis within Texas and across the nation. For more info, visit restartcbd.com and tobebluntpod.substack.com. And enjoy the show. Shayda, welcome to the show. It's good to have you.
Thanks, Rob. I'm so honored to be on Apartment 113. I've heard the great history behind the name of the show and excited to be contributing my voice and story to the conversation.
Hey, definitely. Yeah, and your voice has been contributing a lot already to the cannabis industry with the To Be Blunt podcast. Like we were discussing earlier here, 167 episodes, round of applause all around.
Thank you.
Massive success there and consistency. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Like you were kind of talking, beforehand a little bit too. I think it's something that I loved doing. I no longer podcast, kind of RIP to people who obviously tuned into the show, loved the show. I appreciated it for what it was, but I think when you're running a business and just anything in life, right? Like there's only so many things you can balance and juggle. And so the podcast was something that had to give for me. But the 4 years that I did it, which, wow, 4 years of podcasting, it was really encouraging just to, get a better pulse for the industry. I think there's so much going on state to state, market to market. The hemp versus marijuana side of the cannabis coin is certainly an interesting intersection that I love to play in. And so, yeah, learned a lot and hopefully can help contribute some of that as well as what I've learned and seen and participated in here in the Texas cannabis market as well.
Yes, and Texas is a market that many folks have been watching to see what's going on there. It's just such a massive, market size that, depending on the direction things go, many people stand to benefit and perhaps to lose in that situation. Especially with the hemp and THC derivatives, pushing in through the state. Maybe they're not going to have time to stand up a true recreational cannabis industry before this kind of wave of CBD and alternatives sweep across. Did you start the brand before podcasting, or did the two kind of start up at the same time with Restart and To Be Blunt?
Oh, yeah. So we started Restart in August of 2018. So a little bit of, background as far as like the schedule of events, so to speak. So hemp became federally legal in 2018 at the federal level, thanks to the Farm Bill that passed, that legalized less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC on a dry weight basis. Texas would essentially copy that legislation and adopt it for Texas's legislation in 2019. So very similar. Our law mimics the federal law. So anything less than 0.3% Delta-9 THC on a dry weight basis. Much to people's maybe unfamiliarity, every state market, just because hemp was federally legalized, thanks to the Farm Bill, not every state actually has regulation around it. So meaning a licensing structure. In Texas in 2019, when hemp became legal, we quickly impose as a state a licensing structure. So there are hemp retail licenses, hemp cultivation licenses, And so that was something that me and my sister, so I own Restart with my sisters, were able to obtain. We were one of the first license holders in Texas from a hemp retail license perspective. But really, the quick story entry of like Restart in general, I was in a car accident, hit by a vehicle as a pedestrian, downtown Austin, broke my pelvis, thrust in traditional Western medicine, lifelong cannabis consumer, love high THC, had no understanding of CBD versus THC, endocannabinoid system versus, just getting, cannabis from my local dealer and just consuming it.
It was a more simple process.
It was very, very basic. And in that, naivety, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so when my accident happened, my mom was like, do you know about CBD? And I was like, WTF is that? Quick Google. I'm like, yep, I get it every day when I smoke pot. I'm pretty good, Mom. And she's like, no, you should try CBD. And so the long story short is we were familiar with CBD as a family because of how impactful CBD was independent of THC for my inflammation and pain management. And that was what put us on the journey of building Restart, essentially. So 2015, 2016 was my accident. 2018, we started Restart in August. Later that year, hemp would become federally legal. And then the following year, Texas would be legal. So it wasn't that I necessarily started Restart being like, I'm going to make a brand in the hemp market because there's a hemp industry. It was much more simpler than that. It was just, I love marketing and branding. I love cannabis. I was using CBD at the time to help me manage my pain. My my parents are small business entrepreneurs, and they were like, you should start a business. I was like, who's going to buy CBD oil?
That sounds like they're good parents, though, encouraging that entrepreneurial spirit, right?
God bless my parents, very much so. I mean, it's funny, like now 6 years later, so Restart will turn 6 in August of 2024. And we're like, whoa, we get to do this with our family, support and encouragement. And like, we wouldn't have been here had our mom not been so tolerant of me consuming cannabis in general. Like, I'm very fortunate. I have a family that is like, get good grades. And if you smoke pot on the side and you're getting good grades, that's okay. And I know that that's not the case for everyone.
Right.
But I grew up that way.
It's the first thing that matters more, huh?
Yeah. And so my parents just were already destigmatized, already had a normal, association to it, that when my mom suggested it, it was more just like, I don't know what CBD is. That sounds weird. But my mom is very into like holistic medicine and things like that. So again, lended itself to us kind of creating Restart. But the podcast came pretty much, to kind of get back to that point, the podcast came 2 years-ish, maybe like a year and a half after starting Restart. Timeline, we launched in 2018. Really 2019 was everything on fire because of the Farm Bill. So you saw a lot of people paying a lot more attention to hemp. And then 2020, of course, with the pandemic. So we like launched our brand, got a really good foothold. And then the pandemic happened and it was like, I can't go to conferences. I can't
pivot. Yeah.
Network and talk to people. The market is like always evolving. It's never settled down since we launched, but then especially with new legislation, it was truly just like the unknown. And being one of the first operators in the state of Texas, you're looking left and right and you're like, nobody is the point of truth. And I am not the point of truth by any means, but who is the point of truth? And so I got the, idea, hey, if I can learn from other states, I can learn from other people, I can, kind of fall on the sword and fail forward, essentially. I can learn a lot. And so I started the podcast in the, my listeners knew this and know this, people who interact with me. I like to lovingly refer to myself as a very selfish human being. And so the podcast was like so much for me. And the benefit and blessing was like other people got to participate and learn and glean invaluable information from it. But it was really just my selfishness of like, I have to solve a problem that I do not know where to even begin. Oh my gosh, Let me start asking people who are smarter than me. And it just became a beautiful spiral from there.
So really a stage for those conversations or for that kind of information gathering.
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
That's excellent. And while you start a brand too, I imagine that there's some valuable lessons you could pull over from across the state borders. Even though maybe it wasn't time yet, you could start to see where the road may go.
Payment processing, technology, inventory management, marketing, social media. There were a lot of things that, I think are universal problems we all share to some extent. And so that was a really, interesting position to be in again, too. I mean, it wasn't like, okay, my state's coming online for cannabis, which at the time was hemp, right? It was the United States is coming online for this new form of cannabis. And so we were like, not just first movers in Texas, we were like first movers in the United States of, again, being like, okay, so you do, marijuana POS, but like, what about hemp POSs? And I came from e-commerce and technology. And so I'm like, okay, I want to talk about integrations. And people are like, you're talking about a little bit before we started recording about metric, some of these POSs in the early days, they were so robust and I had to pay for all these additional features that as a hemp brand, I didn't have to.
You don't need that red tape,
and so
right?
it was this just like weird, like, okay, so there's cannabis solutions, but there's not hemp solutions. And I'm federally legal, so I can be online and do e-commerce, but nobody has an e-commerce platform for me that lets me take their money. So we were
payments in the mix. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. In a very early, gray area that obviously again is still gray, but at that time it was just like, crap, there's a lot of unknowns. And we're very fortunate with my tech background. We were one of the first onboarded into Square's CBD merchant programs. Like that was a big lift for us,
awesome.
But
so
yeah,
you
just
weren't
like
running for payments constantly as these dominoes have fallen over the last year or two.
No, we
That's
were able
good.
to like have some security, but it was definitely like reflecting on it. It's funny, one of my employees, she's newer on the team and aware of, kind of cannabis at a consumer high level, but obviously not working in the industry at this, depth. And so she's listening to right now, our Texas lieutenant governor, which for those of you who don't know Texas politics, our lieutenant governor has way more influence than our governor actually. And so our lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick, he dictates where and what bills get heard during session. And he decided to put dealing with Delta 8 and Delta 9 hemp derivatives on his legislative agenda. And so it's causing a lot of just fodder and feedback and concern in the state, and rightfully so. And my employee was like, does this make you nervous? And I think I'm desensitized at this point. I was like, me nervous? Like, what have I gone through the last, 5.5 years in business dealing with all these other, just hemp, cannabis, payment processing, like there's just always something that gets the rug pulled out from underneath you in this industry. And so I think I've developed thick skin and an attitude of just perseverance. And you got to be comfortable with pivoting. You've got to be comfortable with, kind of gluing together a solution. And so it was a funny reflection where she's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, this doesn't scare me. I was like, I'm fine. We've gone through worse. So,
and would Dan Patrick's perspective, would he be in opposition to?
Oh yes, he is in opposition. So
gotcha.
Yes.
So he might be directing some ire or potentially more restrictions or red tape on that side.
And it's not that the issue hasn't popped up in previous legislative sessions. We're very well aware. It's obviously a similar conversation that is mimicking in federal farm bill policy. People want it to be reconciled between this quote unquote access to less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis. And so on our stance, to like interject that a little bit. So in addition to running Restart, formerly doing the podcast, I'm also the president of the Texas Hemp Coalition. So
yes,
our state's advocacy group. So I'm pretty involved in advocacy from a Texas perspective. We roll up into U.S. Hemp Roundtable. So we do federal advocacy. I'll probably be going to D.C. later this year. That'll be my third time in D.C. doing advocacy on the Hill. So these are issues that are repeating issues and concerns. It's not, again, a shock to any of us. It's more just I'm learning how politics works and how lobbying works and how
it's uncomfortable sometimes seeing how that game really is played. I think I was not as up to speed as I thought, and then as I've looked into these issues further to really understand what it takes to deschedule and make these changes nationwide, it's man, is it convoluted.
Yes. And so it's fun when you see like a news article and it's like, safe banking is going to pass the House. It's like, yeah, but is it going to pass the Senate? Like it has to pass both chambers for it to actually go into law. So there's just some understanding of politics, and then the, clickbait of the media.
A lot of
who wants to
fanfare.
keep, perpetuating some of these narratives or even some of these political biases. I mean, I'll be upfront. I really believe cannabis is a bipartisan issue.
It seems
I see support on both sides, especially in Texas.
The aisle.
We have a lot of Republican conservative support for cannabis. It just is unfortunate there are certain people in position. And so it's more on, the coalition stance, my personal stance. We're really here to educate.
It starts to become more on party preference still more than true demographic representation.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is probably an issue for a future episode.
Yeah, there's just a lot of stigma still. And so it's just a lot of bad reputation. And so again, as a Texan, I always love to kind of represent our state to the best that I can, where we want to go in, we want to be professional, we want to hear their concerns, we want to educate them, because I think they think, like, this is my whole argument back to, like, Dan Patrick, if you're listening, you eliminating these products from the marketplace is going to only further push and perpetuate. And I don't have necessarily anything ill with the legacy market, right? So there's like a very fine line of like legacy operators who have good intention versus like people who just want to pump shitty products because they can and make a profit. So it's like, that's more my concern is like, hey, Dan Patrick, you eliminating this from a regulated market is going to further perpetuate some of this bad actorness that, like, hey, let's regulate it. Like, give us better regulation.
It does seem to almost empower the black market by further restricting anything else. You're going to need to bring it above board and get some laws around it. Face the obstacle.
Yes.
Rather than hide it, because if
and
you
the
hide
data's
it,
there. People want these products.
Industry.
And so it's hard when you feel like your state makes you feel like a criminal for selling something that consumers gush about the impact that it has in their day-to-day lives. And even personally, obviously, like, it's changed my life so much when I'm easily able to go get a prescription for opioids, and that's celebrated and encouraged and accepted. But the moment I bring up cannabis as my, alternative, I'm demonized and the stigma just gets perpetuated. It's just like, we're in 2024. Right? Like, how is this still the conversation we're having? But okay, fine. It's not my job to necessarily, explicitly convince you otherwise. I don't expect everybody to lock arms and be like, oh my God, we were so wrong. Like, there's just so much history.
You can't just turn face completely and say
get
you're wrong anyways, even if maybe you were.
Exactly. But, so it's just, communicating.
Baby steps, right?
Yeah, having good representation. And I think that's what we're doing in Texas. That's what I'm proud to represent. And,
the Texas Hemp Coalition sounds awesome. I love the acronym there with THC.
Yes.
How long have you been involved with the coalition? Is it based there in Austin as well?
It is, based here in Austin, but it's a statewide organization. We are, I think, a 4-year-old organization, if I'm not mistaken. I've been involved for 3 years. I'm on their executive board, and then the last 2 years I was voted into presidency. So I've been president last year and then just begun my second term in February, and love the opportunity that the coalition affords me, which is really to represent Texas in conversations like this, in addition to when I'm going to the Capitol, when I'm going to DC, when I'm doing other media and press, really being a voice of reason. I wouldn't, again, say explicitly like we're right by any means, but hey, the times are changing and you should listen to our side of the table as well. And here's, data to back it up. Here's anecdotal evidence to back it up. Here's, science now. You see so much more research and reports being done on these cannabinoids, on the endocannabinoid system, that it's a little hard to be like, it's the devil's lettuce. It's like, that's not a great argument. Let's try again. Like, what's
not
your real
so
problem
easily dismissed anymore.
Yeah. And so those are fun intersections that the coalition, kind of presents for operators, where we are both regulated by the state as well as self-regulated. So we are a B2B organization of other cultivators, retailers, manufacturers, processors, samplers, anything along the supply chain, services, accountants, lawyers, other tech, things like that. And it's a great representation of the infrastructure that the Texas hemp market and as an extension, the Texas cannabis market has to offer. We were pulling some recent reports. There's a gentleman named Bo Whitney. He does a lot of market analysis, like he's an economist kind of for the cannabis industry. And I'm going to space on some of the explicit numbers, but I think it was like $20 billion is like his assessment of the Texas hemp cannabis market. So meaning the sale and purchase and manufacturing of these products, you can't just take that industry away. It's going to go somewhere, right? And so that's the conversation that we try to lean into and show a little bit of the cat's out of the bag.
There's a lot of ancillary businesses that have been spun up around this all, many jobs involved. It's not just a farmer choosing to grow hemp or not. It's
there's
become
infrastructure.
Much more. Yeah.
There's a lot of consumers. There's serious money in our industry. And so.
Yes. Yeah, it is that unique with Texas in handling the hemp licenses in that method, or was it, did it originate with Texas? I'm not too familiar with actually hemp cultivation or needing to have hemp retail licenses in other states. I haven't heard of that often. Yeah,
some states do. Not all states will impose a license structure, which is maybe where some of the bias comes from, maybe from the regulated or adult use market. They assume hemp is just totally unregulated and there's no checks and balances and nobody's doing any due diligence. And my argument is also like, yes, Colorado, California, and Washington, you also are regulated, but who qualifies your COAs or your THC, gouging, like there's adulteration in every aspect of the industry. You can't convince me that's not the case.
If you set up a system, people will find a way to abuse it.
Yeah, so it's like if you point the finger, it's like, okay, well, this isn't going to go away. How about we regulate it better? And so, no, I don't think every state, unfortunately, does have a licensing structure. I don't believe Texas was the first.
Was it difficult to go through the licensing process in Texas as far as like location and things, or was it more application and...
It is a much friendlier application than adult use or medical license. That's for sure.
That's awesome.
It's very accessible. It's like a $250 license. You can fill it out on the web. It takes maybe 15, 20 minutes if you have all your coordinates of where your location is.
Wow, almost like we're in the future now, right?
Landlord, affirming that you do this business and they're aware of it. And, they just want to make sure, you're kosher, you're legal, you have insurance. And then as a result, you become listed in a database that's public information by the state of Texas that they have certain requirements. So like as a manufacturer, my labels have to have a COA. What is the COA's, like, does it expire? How often are you renewing a COA per product? Is it per batch? That unfortunately is not very explicit. So I can again see where there's gaps in the regulation and enforcement of the regulation.
Improved tracking and things like that.
But we absolutely have it. They are a state entity. They recently came and visited my dispensary retail shop a couple months ago last year. And they come in, they're looking at packaging. They're making sure that your labels speak to what their requirements are, which it has to have a COA.
Is that the Texas DOR that manages that?
It is the Texas Department of State Health Services. So we call them DISHs. They are our like health regulatory, they did a lot of stuff when it was COVID time, things like that. So again, an argument, food for thought would be, who is the right entity and body to be, regulating and enforcing these programs? I don't think the adult use programs have great examples. I mean, California, you look at it, they've got a whole California cannabis division, and maybe it's gotten better, and I don't represent California by any means, but just from the podcast, having a lot of friends operate in California, they're like, it could be better. It's like...
It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah,
the
no
fees
program.
And the taxes and everything.
Yeah, I hear a lot of stuff about Nevada, what y'all are going through. It's like no program is perfect, but I think a program is the first step. And so, yes, we have a program. We have people who are, their job is to come and enforce. Are they enforcing? I would argue not to the best of their abilities. That's what we would love to talk about more in session. Yeah. But yes, it's not a free-for-all. There is some checks and balances, and I think people just need to be, a little bit more aware of those different programs and the states that lack programs. I would say that's the first thing I would try to go impose and enforce is you should absolutely be having some sort of regulatory program to help work with the industry to build something that is mutually beneficial both for operators and ultimately for consumers.
Right. I think it's easy for states without an industry to overlook all the side business that comes along with the industry and all the tax dollars from their neighboring states, and consistent retail income, and jobs and real estate turnover that can start happening, as well as maybe buildings that before weren't attractive to current markets maybe become perfect candidates for cannabis real estate, and shoot the area up. I think there's so many like hidden benefits within the industry, both on the cannabis and the hemp side, that it's only just begun as we kind of get back to our roots as a nation and start growing more hemp. And I feel like Texas should be representing the Midwest and really a capital for hemp production as well. So I imagine over time, as the coalition grows and gets a louder voice, we may see more hemp from the Midwest. I'm looking at you too, Kansas.
Industrial hemp is interesting on that front. We talk about it a lot. So like for industrial hemp to truly succeed in America, there's again, same with politics, which is kind of like why I named my podcast To Be Blunt. Like, I'm not going to be everybody's best friend over here. I'm not here to sugarcoat the industry for you. I'm here to tell you exactly what I'm hearing and seeing and allow you to make your own decision. There is so much infrastructure that goes involved in making a hemp t-shirt, for example. So just because you want to grow for hemp that can be turned into fiber that can then be processed into a ingredient or material to be making into fabric.
It's a whole supply chain.
It's a whole supply chain, and we don't produce clothes in America. I have a friend who's in supply chain. She used to work for Under Armour. She has a hemp towel business called Enact. Shout out to Enact. And one of her challenges was she was like, I want to make this in America. I want to make this in Texas. And I'm like, good for you, sister girlfriend. I can see that you can maybe find cultivators, but then finding a processor who's going to actually process that, who's then going to go weave it. It's at some point her supply chain still involves overseas. So it's a much bigger conversation. Maybe you see, I think the adoption in the Americas, that was weird, in America and in Texas is more on the building material side, on the
hempcrete and things like that. Yeah, that could be more created here within the
rebar.
nation.
Yes, so it's certain aspects of industrial feed. I think those you can see. Insulation, maybe we'll have a little bit of runway, but shout out to South Dakota. They're doing a lot of interesting stuff by way of industrial hemp. We've got some members that are part of US Hemp Roundtable that we do some business with, and they are representing industrial hemp really greatly. Hempwood is another really great brand that's doing really amazing work with hemp from a industrial, material perspective. But it's a long tail that from a coalition perspective, we absolutely want to support and encourage that in Texas. But obviously the cannabinoid market is more popular right now. And so you saw a lot of farmers who were going and growing industrial, and then they're like, cool, who do I sell it to? And we're like, yeah, well, to process it, you actually need someone who's X amount of miles around, your destination locale. And it's
you got to get it processed in time, right? It can't really be shipped these extreme distances.
So you can grow it, but if you don't have a processor nearby, then who's going to actually take that? So yeah, it's a long-winded kind of, problem and challenge that the industry I know is eagerly addressing. I was just in Estes Park speaking at NOCO Hemp Expo. There was a lot of, obviously, attention around industrial, but also a lot of attention around hemp-derived cannabis beverages, which are launching, and THCA, as you're kind of, alluding to earlier, some of these hemp-derived challenges and opportunities. But I wanted to loop around to an idea just while it's top of mind too. We're talking about what's going on in Texas, and to me, it's really remarkable how the state of Texas has almost glorified alcohol, right? In our legislative session 2 years ago, they passed alcohol to go as an extension for the impact that small businesses were feeling because of the COVID pandemic. And that same session, hemp operators were related to the mafia or drug cartels, right? We're such a problem over here. And then what you're seeing happen right now are a lot of these alcohol brands are noticing their sales are waning because consumers, the demographic is shifting for these, whatever the next Gen Z, Millennial, Gen XY, I don't remember what alphabet number they are. They're not drinking. I'm even in my mid-30s. I don't drink alcohol. I exclusively am on cannabis seltzers and cannabis, alternative products. And so
that's starting to shift the projections and the interests in a different way. Huh?
So that's where I see what's happening in session. I'm like, he released that agenda a little, not prematurely, but like we've got so much time before session. Like session doesn't kick off until like a whole like year from now. And so
yeah, it's kind of building up the agenda for 2025, huh?
A lot of change could happen though. So in Texas, for example, you're seeing a lot of operators meaning like liquor stores, bars, restaurants, grocery stores, where you would purchase alcohol. They are now selling these hemp-derived cannabis beverages. And so it's a really exciting market to be a part of because, I mean, being just in Colorado, I could not find a cannabis beverage outside of the dispensary. Even good luck finding one in the dispensary because of how difficult it is for refrigeration space and distribution and transportation of these products.
Meanwhile, that's a good comparison versus the stores that have, aisles of cooler and fridge
these
space.
Grocery stores. Yeah. Meanwhile, anywhere in Austin, Texas, I could literally throw a pebble and I could find a cannabis seltzer.
So they're popping up across the liquor stores and across the way. And you guys have a new seltzer line?
So we just launched Restart Rita, which is our low dose seltzer. So it's 5 milligrams Delta-9 THC, 5 milligrams CBD, which is like in line with what you're seeing people are launching right now. So I track a lot of the Cannabis Beverage Association and Hemp Beverage Alliance groups. They're both kind of like the leaders, both between like the marijuana and the hemp, beverage categories. And they are basically kind of helping establish like anything 10 milligrams and less is considered a low dose product and therefore should, based on, the current hemp farm bill legislation, be accessible and allowed to be sold through these different points of sale. And so we obviously, being the brand that we are in Austin, have been having a lot of fun with some of those opportunities by way of just educating people, making them know that these products exist, connecting with brands who want to sell these products. So we are being sold in different stores, retails, grocery chains, restaurants, and so you
being
can
able to expand already so much. I love that that side of the industry is kind of unleashed, and the regulated side of the space is just stuffy and having to wait in line and jump through all the hoops and wait for everything, where you see these brands like Restart, you're able to partner with chefs and partner with local businesses and, impact the community in a way that, the regulated space definitely wants to do. At least some of them want to, but the limitations are really harsh right now. So it feels like just an open playing field on the hemp side, looking at the way businesses can play and collaborate.
Well, and you're seeing a lot of the adult use brands wanting to participate. So I think Can being a really big one on the beverage. Majority of their business is hemp derived. You saw Kiva most recently is jumping into the hemp derived space. 1906 is jumping. Smokies. Like I could keep going. Like there's more brands every day that are like, oh, that's so interesting. And I think the point that I'd love to kind of, further express is just I'm playing within the confines that were put in front of me, just like you in whatever state market are playing within the confines that are put in front of you. What a cool, beautiful opportunity, though, that hemp has helped crack the door wide open from a federal perspective, really, truly allowing consumers to have access to these products. I agree that there is maybe an overabundance and a lack of regulation, and that is a issue for consumers, absolutely. But to neglect the opportunity that hemp has paved, not only for access to these products, but the breadth as well of cannabinoids. I mean, I remember going to dispensaries prior to hemp's legalization, and you're getting a THC or a THC gummy. You're not getting anything with CBG, anything with CBN, anything with THCV, CBC. Like these are all powerful cannabinoids.
Only 21 plus percentage THC for you. And
have access to. And so it's really nice to be able to see products that are 1-to-1 ratios or playing off of different blends of different cannabinoids based on, the research and exposure that we've had to these cannabinoids now, thanks to hemp's access and legalization. So I want people to hopefully see the possibility that hemp has created for cannabis. I really don't see it as like hemp versus marijuana, where two sides of the same coin, and the ushering of what accessible cannabis is going to look like is definitely going to be different than what we see today. It's got to get reconciled for both, again, sides of the coin. But
I feel like the sides, it's merging together. Yeah. And I mean, some parts of it are maybe still very unique, one side versus the other. But overall, for future generations, that didn't grow up with this distinction, they won't see, one industry versus the next. There's not necessarily the liquor store and then the spirits shop and like a difference between what they're selling or what's being provided. So I think if you look at it as a CPG and kind of look at the trends of everything else, in a decade's time, the CPGs would be all together, and all these cannabinoids might just be called out when they are actually hemp derived versus cannabis derived, or whatever we end up calling that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely see that as the future. And as uncomfortable as it is for operators across the board right now, I really think it's a remarkable experience to be able to, just born and raised in Texas. If you would have asked me when I was, 18, 19 years old, going and visiting my aunt and uncle in Colorado and like on the cusp, like watching what's happening with their adult use program being legalized, it's like, one day, Texas, you're going to legalize. And that conversation has just been, just completely blown up to some extent. I mean, yes, Texas on paper is still fighting for a medical marijuana program. But I believe the argument of, well, we're waiting for Texas to legalize is void because you already have some aspect of legalization. It's called hemp. And so consumers can have access to these products already today. And so the progress of, okay, well, I've got to wait for my state to have a better medical program for a couple of years to then impose an opportunity for an adult use program is like wipe that out of the table, because
it doesn't have to go that process.
Yeah. So I think you'll still see medical to some extent. I think there's going to be high dose products. I think a dispensary is still going to exist, but kind of exactly like you're painting, you can go get, maybe people don't know this about Texas, but Texas laws, even for alcohol, I cannot buy hard liquor in my grocery stores. I have to go to a liquor store.
Just the 3.5.
Yes. So you're going to maybe see something similar where the groceries are still selling the beer and the seltzers. They're going to sell the low dose cannabis products. You want your higher strength product, you're going to go into a dispensary that's going to be able to serve you those higher strength products and have more of an education and, just consumer awareness around dosage and strengths versus what we're seeing happen right now. So,
and I understand I understand the anxiety too from the regulated space, especially as they're being pressed by 280E, with shrinking margins and, no marketing budget. It's a hell of a fight to operate on that side. So I can understand wanting to be defensive of the industry or kind of put up a moat, but it's the big picture, right? That we need to look at. Yeah,
it's
those, because those kinds of fights won't stand up. It does unfortunately shine a light on what needs to be revised, in due time, on the federal level, if we could do away with 280E on the regulated space so that these companies could actually participate a little bit more alongside the hemp companies. I think that would see that merger start to happen even more naturally. Yeah.
No, I don't.
Because most of it's just saltiness with the taxpayers and all the audits and things going on the compliance side that if you look over and see, a hemp brand like Restart frolicking in these green fields, you start to feel jealous from the salt mines of the cannabis industry.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that, like first mover advantage of like, hey, your state was one of the first states to legalize and like, haha, joke's on you, Texas. Like you're going to be last to the party. And again, this was not the plan. This wasn't the intention. I also hate when the word like loophole gets thrown around. As much as it is a perceived loophole, to me, I see it as rules are rules, but if you don't push the rules and the boundaries, then the rules might not ever change and evolve, right? And so
a loophole today is a standard tomorrow.
Yeah, was this the intent of the Farm Bill? No, but hey, we're really smart and we're really clever and we figured out how to make lemonade, so to speak, out of the lemon situation. And so again, it's like, was that the intent? No, but look at what this, exposure, maybe openly exposed, but the exposure has afforded for adoption, consumer access, pushing the boundaries of what can be tolerant in some of these direct-to-consumer CPG kind of environments. It's like, look, I can sell in, like I was just in an article the other day talking about the Dan Patrick, agenda. And the question was, well, Dan Patrick doesn't want these products being sold to children. It's like, I don't want these products being sold to children.
Nobody's pushing this for kids, right?
No, when I go to a bar, I can, not even a bar, when I go any restaurant that serves alcohol, I can bring children there and my child cannot order the same way. They're checking IDs. Like, those products are adult use already out there. And I would argue alcohol, again, has far worse implications on our physical bodies than cannabis ever could or would. Yet we're this, can't let the kids, can't put it in public. Like, people are going to have a bad experience. It's like, but yet alcohol is accessible. So to me, it's just having those conversations on repeat and professionally and with a spirit of education, just to help, whoever we're talking to, whether it's a consumer, someone with a stigma, a policymaker, a regulator, a law enforcement officer, like, let's talk about it. Let's understand. Like,
and you've got to get past those straw man kind of arguments of saying, we can't sell to kids and things like that. It's like, obviously we all know that. And obviously there are products in CPGs that are not sold to kids. And we've already figured that out.
Exactly.
For all of our existence.
Exactly. So it's kind of taking the conversation and like throwing it back on them to be like, okay, well, you can't use that as an argument anymore.
What's beyond that? You got to go deep, got to go deeper than the surface level to really find that stigma or where the confusion is at. But I can see that, the healing that the hemp-based and hemp-derived brands can potentially provide. As, folks, I grew up in Kansas, and there's definitely part of my family that probably wouldn't want to try anything that comes from a dispensary, no matter what anyone says about it.
Yeah.
And I think that the same folks would appreciate, a seltzer, a low milligram seltzer easily with dinner and try it without any concern, especially if they could just buy it like normal with their soda or with anything else, and they don't feel any pressure. For folks like myself who, like, cannabis consumption was an identity thing, honestly, before the industry started. It's much different. You don't feel any pressure at all. It almost feels awesome still to be like, hell yeah, I'm going to go in this store and buy some weed.
No, it's like, I'm liberated. I'm like, I can do this legally. Like, this is awesome. Let's go.
But for all the aunts and uncles out there, it's much more of a different thing. They don't want people to see them parking there or, stuff like that.
We still have, we hear those stories every day. Hard. I mean, in our family, like, especially, like, I do have family members who, it's funny, over the years, because I get to run a business with my family and my sisters, and we're very public about our cannabis consumption. Every Thanksgiving for the past 4 years, we've made an infused pie or cake or something. And that's so awesome. The first time it was like, okay, well, this is dose, eat it at your own, will.
Everyone's wondering which one's the restart pie.
Yeah, my uncle was just giving me dirty looks and kind of telling his kids, you do not go near that pie. You can't have it. And they're like, well, we're curious. Why can't we have it? And he's just like, absolutely not. Till last Thanksgiving, I made this pie and he literally texts me a couple days later. It's like, that pie was awesome. Where can I get more of it? I'm like, literally any product in my shop. Literally any awesome. Edible I sell. I can do that same feeling for you, mister. And so it is. You observed it, right? It's people just don't feel comfortable going into some of these environments. And as much as we can celebrate them and, appreciate that they're accessible to some extent, there's so many more consumers who maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. And it's just more convenient if they can get it at their local restaurant as a non-alcoholic, but still feel a buzz. Can't argue with the convenience. Yeah. So that's been a really fun opportunity and experience for us to be able to lean into in Texas hemp and Texas cannabis for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Well, what's next for Restart this year? Any conferences on the plate? Any appearances or anything kind of local coming around the corner?
Yeah, that's always a fun question. I think we really love leaning into these chef collabs. So really just finding different partners who want to play around with it, whether it's a one-time thing like we did for 420 with this Michelin star chef. We did a dope brownie. It had 5 milligrams of Delta-9 THC in it per brownie. And so they did it for just 420. But then we did another collab. I know, it was so good. They were so decadent too. It was this is getting me high. This is awesome. But then we just are wrapping up another collab we did for the whole month of April with a local smoothie shop. They are kind of mimicking the Erewhon influencer smoothies. And so they wanted to make a 420 April, kind of cannabis friendly smoothie. So they did that with us, but for the whole month. And so it just depends. Cool. What people want to do. We've done infused dinners. We've done sweet, savory menu items. That's really the place that we love to explore and expand. And then just, leaning more into the beverage space. We've got a couple fun expansions for our beverage line, and excited to just keep championing those conversations and really leaning into cannabis as a consumer packaged good, or a cannabis packaged good, as I like to refer to them as.
Yep, it took a little while maybe to really be on the same stage or appreciated as a CPG, but we're truly there, and you can see the evolution around the corner.
It's very exciting. Yeah, we're having a lot of fun doing it too.
Awesome,
Ruffling a little feathers, but having some fun.
Indeed. Hey, it's good to do that. Keep it interesting. Well, thank you for joining today. And in the meantime, where can our listeners connect with you and Restart?
They can find Restart online at Restart CBD on Instagram, restartcbd.com, and then you can find me always on Instagram at the Shayda Torabi, or just look me up on LinkedIn. I love to post and network there. It's probably the best platform for our industry. So find me and say hi.
Hey, excellent. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Apartment 113 podcast. For more information about the show and our range of services, visit apt113.com. We offer cannabis software product management and agile coaching, along with writing services and weekly content. With over a decade of experience in the cannabis industry, Apartment 113 is here to help. If you want to stay connected, subscribe to the newsletter on our site and to the show on your podcast platform of choice.